The storm hadn't been forecasted, at least not by the outdated scanner on Telenor's shuttle. 1 second he was gliding above the emerald canopy of an uncharted world named Veralia 3, scanning for mineral deposits and potential settlement zones. The next, static shredded the dashboard, sirens howled, and plasma sparks danced across the console. With every wrench of the controls, the planet rushed up to meet him like a closing fist. He blacked out just before impact. When Talon came to, the cockpit was cracked but intact. Crumpled metal and shattered glass reflected the jungle's golden morning light. Smoke coiled lazily from torn panels. He coughed, pushed off the canopy, and stumbled outside into thick air laced with floral sweetness and distant cries. His wrist? Link blinked dead. Comms were fried. No rescue signal, no map, and no way home. "I've had worse mornings," he muttered, brushing dirt from his uniform and wincing at the gash on his temple. He salvaged what he could, a solar blade, rations, a med patch, and began moving. The jungle swallowed him within minutes, a living tunnel of vines and foliage that grew thicker and stranger the deeper he ventured. The air buzzed with heat and unseen life, and shadows flickered in his peripheral vision. Talon was a surveyor, not a soldier, but he'd handled first contact protocols, even diffused a hostage crisis between 2 warring exoclans on Vega Orn. Still, nothing in the manuals mentioned brown-furred feline girls watching you from the trees. Not that he saw her, not yet, but she saw him, and the jungle held its breath. Talon pushed through the dense underbrush with one hand on the hilt of his solar blade. Every vine felt like it was reaching, every leaf like a veil. The deeper he moved, the more he felt like a trespasser. The jungle wasn't resisting him exactly, it was watching him, not with hostility but with a quiet ancient curiosity. He stopped to drink from his canteen near a small stream and felt it again, that prickle on the back of his neck. He spun around fast. Nothing, just ferns, mist, and trees so tall they vanished into a green fog. He moved on. Hours passed. He marked his route with bits of metal from the shuttle, wedged into roots and trunks. But even as he did, something inside him whispered he wouldn't be going back that way. The jungle shifted too easily, trails vanishing, moss reclaiming footprints as soon as they formed. That was when he reached the clearing. It opened suddenly, a wound in the foliage. Sunlight broke through the canopy, illuminating a circle of carved stones, ancient, weathered, and etched with symbols he didn't recognize. In the center was a platform, and on it stood the most unexpected sight of Talon's life, a humanoid feline woman. Brown fur, sleek and glossy, clung to a curvy frame wrapped in decorative bands and leather strips. Her face was mostly human, saved for the elegant feline contours, high cheekbones, golden eyes that glowed faintly in the light, and soft ears that twitched as he stepped closer. She was breathtaking, not just beautiful, but commanding, poised, a creature of instinct and intelligence both. Around her, perched on stone ledges or crouched in the shadows, were more of her kind. Warriors, all female, eyes narrowed and unreadable. Talon didn't move. Then she did. She leapt from the platform in a single fluid motion, landing in front of him with a grace no human could match. Her tail flicked once behind her. He could smell the wild on her, the scent of heat, earth, and fur. She stepped in close, tilted her head, and studied him with unnerving intensity. "You fell from the sky," she said softly, her voice smooth, accented, strangely melodic. Talon swallowed. "Yeah, that's accurate." She leaned in, and before he could react, her tongue slid across his cheek. Slow, deliberate. He froze. Behind her, gasps rang out. The others dropped to one knee in unison, heads bowed. "What the hell just happened?" he breathed. "You've been marked," she said, brushing her clawed fingers along his shoulder. "The bond has begun." "Wait. Bond?" Talon laughed nervously. "Look, I think there's been a huge—" She smiled, and it was not a reassuring expression. "You're mine now." Talon's stomach dropped. The feline woman didn't give him time to argue. She turned and motioned sharply with her hand. The warriors rose in unison and stepped aside, forming a pathway through the clearing. "Walk," she said without turning back. "Look, I'm sure you're very nice and everything." Talon began, trying to inject some diplomacy into his voice. "But this is probably just a big cultural misunderstanding. You don't actually own me." She paused, then glanced over her shoulder, her golden eyes narrowing with amusement. "You talk like prey trying to reason with the hunt. But the bond has already heard you." "The what?" She tapped her chest just above, her heart. "The bond chosen by the old spirits, seen by the gods. I touched you, marked you. That makes you mine." Talon groaned. "Do you people even have a word for no?" She gave a slow, teasing grin. "Yes, but it is not used when the stars agree." With that, she started walking again. The tribe followed, and reluctantly so did he. They moved through an archway of twisted vines woven into a natural gate. The air grew heavier as they followed a stone path deeper into the jungle. Talon tried not to trip on the exposed roots or gawk at the bioluminescent fungi glowing beneath the brush. The village emerged from the foliage like something out of a dream. Platforms suspended by massive trees, walkways strung between the trunks like bridges of living wood. Fire pits smoldered with green flames, and small shelters shaped from bark and giant leaves clung to cliff faces. Children peeked out from high nests, their feline features wide with curiosity. Talon was led to the central platform, a flat space carved from stone with a massive totem standing tall in the center. At its base were two carved figures, one furred and strong, the other smooth-skinned and smaller. Their foreheads touched. He stared at it. "It's a prophecy," she said beside him. "Of course it is," Talon muttered. She turned to him, her voice now lower. "I am Vila, daughter of the hunt, speaker for the bond. And now yours." Talon stepped back, hands raised. "Let's slow down here, Vila. I didn't agree to any of this." Vila stepped forward, but the spirits did, and they do not wait for your permission. Before he could respond, a horn sounded from somewhere in the village. Fires flared, voices rose in a language he couldn't understand, and flower petals rained from above. Vila took his hand and held it up. The crowd roared. Talon closed his eyes. He was so screwed. As night fell, the jungle transformed. Fires bloomed from pits carved into the stone, their green and orange flames casting dancing shadows across the village. Drums began to echo through, the canopy not harsh or frantic but rhythmic, ceremonial, primal. Talon sat awkwardly on a low cushion of woven fibers, his back to a tree wrapped in glowing moss. A carved platter was set before him, filled with strange meats, fruits that pulsed faintly with light, and a sweet-smelling drink, served in a bowl shaped like a curled leaf. Every eye in the village was on him. Across from him, Vila reclined against a carved stone seat, her legs crossed, tail flicking lazily behind her. Her golden eyes never left him, as if watching to see how a bonded male might act. He reached for a piece of roasted meat, hesitating. "It's not poisoned," she said, with a smirk. "Comforting," he muttered, then took a bite. It was surprisingly tender, with a smoky sweetness that reminded him of barbecue back home. A cheer rose from a nearby group of warriors as he ate, like it was some kind of rite of passage. Vila nodded, with approval, and leaned forward slightly. "You are adapting. I'm surviving," Talon corrected. "It is the same thing here," she said, sipping from her own bowl. "Survival is adaptation." He watched her in the firelight, the way it reflected off her brown fur, the faint shimmer of tribal paint still lining her arms and collarbone. She looked like a work of art come to life, all strength and curves and silent command. "This bond thing," he said finally. "It's not just a symbol, is it?" Vila's smile faded into something more serious. "It is more. It is seen by the spirits, yes, but it also binds the living. If I claim you, I take responsibility for your life. Your soul reflects on mine. If you fall, I fall." Talon blinked. "So you're stuck with me?" Her voice dropped into something softer. No, I chose you. The stars agreed. The bond deepens when you stop resisting it. He rubbed his temples. I was just doing a routine mineral survey. Now I'm a myth. Vila reached out and touched his hand, gentle but firm. You are more than you think, Talon roared. This world saw it. I saw it. The others will see it too once you prove it. Prove it how? She rose, every movement fluid and sure, and gestured toward the jungle. Tomorrow your trials begin. 3. To test your courage, your connection, and your spirit. Why do I get the feeling one of them involves something with claws? Vila chuckled. Because all the best ones do. Talon leaned back against the mossy trunk, staring up at the stars breaking through the mist. Bonded. Trials. Feline warriors. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but part of him, the part that wasn't terrified, was starting to wonder if he'd fallen into something greater than just a jungle. He might have fallen into fate. The morning came cloaked in a thick blue mist. It curled around the trees like ghostly fingers and dampened every sound to a soft hush. Talon stood near the edge of the village with a coarse fibered cloak draped over his shoulders, his boots still damp from the jungle's dew. Vila approached from the shadows between two root bridges, her movements silent and predatory. She wore a dark brown sash now, marked with symbols in ochre paint. Her hair was pulled back into a braid wrapped with thin vines, and her sharp, golden eyes were sharper than usual. The first trial is survival, she said. Talon sighed. That's vague. She smiled, fangs just visible. Good. They moved quickly through the trees, her leading, him struggling to keep up over the massive roots and hanging vines. She didn't explain the trial further, and he stopped asking after the third time she ignored him. Eventually they came to a slope where the canopy thinned. The air grew warmer, thicker, and the ground changed from moist loam to cracked stone laced, with sulfur and red moss. Heat shimmered in the air. A jagged rift lay ahead, like the jungle had been clawed open by something ancient and angry. This is the maw of Kareth, she said, a hotbed of venomous life, fire lizards, fawn beetles, screamers. Lovely, Talon muttered. You will go in alone, she continued, crouching beside a bush and pulling out a curved dagger with a thick hilt made from bone. There is a nest of razor flies at the center. Bring me one of their spiked wings, it must be cut from the living. Talon took the blade, testing its weight. And if I come back without one? She leaned in, her voice barely a whisper. Then you weren't ready for the bond. He stared at her for a long second. Then, without a word, he turned and walked toward the rift. The heat hit him like a furnace as he descended. Vines hissed when his boots touched them, and the trees became skeletal things, leafless and charred. Buzzing filled the air, a constant grating whine like nails across metal. His heart pounded. Sweat poured down his back. He ducked low near a cluster of stones and saw them. Razor flies about the size of his hand. Wings sharp as needles, bodies armored like beetles and colored in shimmering reds and blacks. They moved in erratic bursts, jittery and fast, hovering near a glowing plant. Talon steadied his breathing and inched forward. He counted 4, then 5. Too many, but he only needed one. He waited, let them drift apart. He chose the smallest, then lunged. The blade came down fast. The insect screamed, a horrible high-pitched screech, and Talon yanked the wing free before tumbling backward, swatting at the air as 2 more buzzed toward his face. One grazed his arm, slicing his sleeve and skin in a single swipe. He rolled, behind a stone outcropping, clutching the wing in his fists. Then, breathing hard, he climbed back out of the rift. Vila was waiting. He dropped the spiked wing at her feet and fell to one knee, panting. She picked it up, examined it, and gave a slow, respectful nod. You bled for the bond, she said. I bled for you, he growled. She didn't smile this time. She touched his wound, pressed a salve to it from a pouch on her hip and whispered, then the bond grows stronger. That night Talon sat by a quiet fire, arm bandaged, body aching, mind racing. The pain from the razor fly sting had dulled. But something else lingered. Something he couldn't quite name. Vila sat across from him. Her posture relaxed, but her gaze never strayed from his. "You passed the first trial," she said softly, tracing patterns in the dirt with one claw. "You bled, and you came back. Most would not." "I'd rather not make that a habit," he replied, shifting to a more comfortable position. She looked up at him then, her expression unreadable. "The next will not draw blood, but it may cut deeper." Talon didn't answer. He was beginning to understand her rhythm, direct, poetic, cryptic. She spoke like the jungle, never in straight lines. She stood and beckoned. "Come." They walked under moonlight. No torches, no escort, just the two of them. The forest had changed, from green and gold to blue and silver, the leaves glowing faintly with reflected starlight. Even the creatures of the night moved with quiet reverence. Eventually, they came to a still pool surrounded by towering roots and carvings that pulsed with dim amber light. The water was black as obsidian, perfectly still, and ringed with white, stones shaped like claws. Vila spoke with a solemn tone. "This is the pool of knowing. It shows what you carry. Regrets, truths, futures, lies." Talon raised an eyebrow. "So basically a very judgmental hot tub." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "It reflects the part of you that hides from yourself. You must enter alone. And what happens if I see something I don't like?" She stepped closer, her brown fur brushed with starlight. "Then you understand what you must defeat." He didn't hesitate this time. Talon stripped off the cloak and stepped into the pool. The water was colder than expected, and it clung to him like silk. With a deep breath, he lowered himself fully. The world disappeared. When he opened his eyes, he was standing in a burning forest. Smoke choked the skies, and metal husks of machines littered the ground. Soldiers, human soldiers, fired into the trees. Screams echoed. He saw himself in uniform issuing orders. Vila was there too, caged in a pod, her fur matted, her eyes full of betrayal. "You promised," she said. The scene shifted, another future. The jungle gone, paved roads, Arcos banners flying overhead. Children marched in line, their feline features masked by corporate emblems. He was in a lab now, pointing at a monitor. His own voice, cold and precise. "Subject shows high cognitive potential. Begin genetic isolation." Talon cried out, but no one heard. Then another shift. A cabin, small, quiet. Vila at his side. Older, softer, her hand in his. A child curled on her lap, purring faintly. He blinked and rose from the water with a gasp. Vila was waiting at the edge, crouched. He dragged himself to shore, trembling. She didn't speak, only watched. Finally, he whispered, "I saw what I could become. What I might become, and..." She asked, "And?" "I won't let that happen. I choose the other path." Vila placed her hand on his chest. "Then the bond is stronger still." The morning after the vision pool felt heavier than the days before. The jungle didn't hum. It waited. Even the trees seemed to lean in closer, as if bracing for what was to come. Talon stood near the village's edge, his skin still damp from last night's ritual. The images from the pool still burned in his mind. He'd seen too many versions of himself. Some he hated, some he barely understood. But one thing was certain. There was no going back to who he was before. Vila approached quietly, a leather harness now strapped across her torso, ceremonial but functional, carrying 2 hooked knives and a coil of vine rope at her hip. Her expression was serious. "The third trial," she said. "I figured," Talon replied, tightening the straps on the gear they'd given him. "Let me guess. This is the one where I fight a god?" She tilted her head. "No gods today, only flame." He blinked. "Better, I guess." Vila gestured, and they walked together this time, with 2 silent warriors trailing behind. Talon recognized them from the feast, elite guards, their fur marked with dark green and bone-colored streaks. Their presence meant something bigger was at stake. They climbed a winding path cut into the cliffside. From up here the jungle stretched, like a breathing ocean of green, and the village shrank to a shimmer of smoke and woven rooftops. They reached a plateau where an ancient stone altar stood, surrounded by torch pits and crumbling statues. In the center was a massive obsidian brazier filled with dull embers. Vila stepped forward and poured something from a clay vessel into the brazier. A hiss. Then fire erupted, roaring to life in a tower of violet flame. "This is the watching fire," she said over the rush of heat. "It judges the soul's weight through the act of defense. Here the tribe will strike at you, not to kill but to test what you'll protect." "I don't follow," Talon said. Vila met his eyes. "They will throw spears. You will shield the bond." His eyes widened. "Wait, you? I'm supposed to defend you?" She nodded. "The final trial is not about killing. It is about standing when it matters, even when you are afraid, even when you know it hurts." Talon turned toward the circle now forming. Warriors surrounded them. Some wore grins, others looked solemn. Spears were drawn, not sharp enough to pierce deep but pointed enough to bruise, to punish weakness. He stepped in front of Vila and took a deep breath. "I'm not a shield," he muttered, "but I'll be damned if I run." The first spear came low. He blocked it with a forearm. The second grazed his thigh, the third slammed into his ribs and nearly knocked him down, but he stayed upright. More came. He grunted, cursed, stumbled, but never stepped aside. His body screamed, his skin burned, but he never moved from in front of her. Finally, mercifully, the fire dimmed. The warriors stopped. The jungle fell silent. Vila stepped forward, her hand on his chest. His breathing was ragged, but his eyes were steady. "You didn't run," she whispered. He laughed, coughing. "Didn't have anywhere better to be?" She smiled and kissed him. Not a ceremonial gesture, not for show. But with fire behind them and the tribe watching, she claimed him. And this time he kissed her back. By the time Talon's bruises began to fade, the jungle was no longer quiet. Birds flew lower. Shadows moved differently. The air carried a strange scent, mechanical, sterile, wrong. Talon stood beside Vila on a high branch that curved out over the cliffs like a natural balcony. His arm was still wrapped where a blunt spear had cracked the skin, but he barely noticed the pain. His eyes were fixed on a dark streak rising far in the distance. Smoke, not from tribal fire pits. This was controlled combustion. Too black, too thick. "They've landed," Vila said beside him, her voice tight. Talon didn't have to ask who. A week ago, the thought of a corporate landing ship would have made him hopeful. Rescue a way back. But not anymore. Now he knew what Arcos Industries did when they thought no one was looking. They didn't explore. They consumed. "How many?" he asked. "Scouts say one ship," she replied. "Small, silent, no banners, not a diplomat." "Black ops," Talon muttered. Vila's tail swayed behind her, agitated. "They come for something. The bond, the ruins, you, perhaps all." Talon glanced at her. "Then we don't wait." She nodded. "We move before the roots are cut." Within hours, the village transformed. Warriors melted into the jungle with weapons drawn. Children were hidden in high nests and cliff caves. Elders began chanting old protections, drawing glyphs on stone with dyes made from crushed beetles and ash. Talon watched them, then joined Vila near the temple platform. She was adjusting the straps of her armor, and for the first time, her hands shook slightly. "You scared?" he asked quietly. She paused, then looked at him. "No, but I feel the pull of history. My mother stood here once, blades drawn. My grandmother before her when the fire came, when strangers tried to take. And now it's your turn." Vila looked away. "Ours." That word carried more weight than he was ready for, but it settled in his chest like a spark waiting to catch. Ari, the grizzled warrior with jagged markings and a permanent scowl, approached with a carved communicator in hand. "They've set up a camp on the western ridge. Light perimeter, 4 sentries, 2 drones looks temporary. Which means it's not, Talon muttered. Ari eyed him. You've been bonded too long, Skyman. You speak like one of us now. He gave a tired smirk. Give it another week. I'll be growling at tree bark. Vila took his hand. We move tonight. Quick strike? He asked. Distraction, she said. Make them think the jungle is rejecting them. No sign of tribe, no sign of you, only fear. Talon tightened his grip. Let's give them something to be afraid of. As the sun dipped behind the canopy and twilight turned the jungle to shadow, the tribe disappeared into the green like ghosts, and Talon Roar, once a lost surveyor, now walked among them. Ready? Night fell heavy and thick, the kind that made even the trees seem to hold their breath. No birds called, no insects sang, just the rustle of leaves as shadow-cloaked warriors moved through the underbrush. Silent, swift, purposeful. Talon crouched beside Vila on a rocky outcropping overlooking the Arcos encampment. Their forward base wasn't large, just a reinforced tent, a trio of black crates and a generator surrounded by metal pylons. The drones hovered in lazy arcs overhead, casting pale lights across the moss-covered ground. Vila whispered, They are blind in the dark, overconfident. We strike when the lights rise again. He nodded. You take the flanks. I'll hit the pylon cables. Ari gave a low chuckle from behind. You're learning, Skyman. Talon checked the salvaged plasma cutter strapped to his thigh. It wasn't powerful. An old tool from his wrecked shuttle, but it could burn through Arcos metal if given enough time. He'd tested it on scrap near the village. Now it had to work for real. The drones dipped low, the lights reset. Vila gave a sharp flick of her tail and the jungle attacked. Arrows sliced the air, made from bone and wrapped in thin cords of lightning moss that crackled on impact. Spears followed. One drone fell in a burst of sparks, another veered away. In confusion, Talon sprinted low through the brush, sliding behind a pylon. He knelt, cutter in hand, and began sawing at the bundle of cables that fed the perimeter shield. Sparks spat into his face. Alarms started to wail. A guard shouted, Too late. Vila moved like fury wrapped in fur, leaping through the shadows, with twin blades flashing. One soldier went down without a sound, his weapon skittering across the rocks. Another turned, raised a stun baton. Talon tackled him before he could strike. The two hit the ground hard, rolling. Talon took a fist to the ribs but rammed the butt of the plasma cutter into the man's helmet. Once, twice. The lights in the visor went dark. Breathing hard, Talon scrambled back up and yanked the final cable free. The pylon sparked and died. Go, Vila called. Before they regroup. Ari hurled a smoke pod into the command tent and the entire camp vanished behind a wall of silver fog. The team slipped away as silently as they'd come, the jungle swallowing their presence again. Back at the village, fires burned low. The scent of sweat, ozone, and crushed moss filled the air. Talon sank onto a woven bench, wiping blood from his lip. That went better than I thought, he said. Vila crouched in front of him, one hand on his chest. You did not falter. He met her gaze. Didn't plan to. She leaned in, her voice a low rumble. They'll come back harder now, but they'll fear the dark. That gives us time. Talon nodded, his heart still hammering. Then we use it. Vila's tail brushed his leg. And you are no longer prey. Rain fell the next morning in a slow, steady curtain, hissing against the canopy. The jungle glistened. Mist clung low to the ground like smoke that had forgotten how to rise. Talon sat beneath the central shelter, sharpening the edge of his salvaged blade with a rock. Every scrape brought him back to earth. Campfires and training camps, the smell of damp boots and rationed coffee. But this wasn't Earth. Not anymore. Vila stepped beside him without sound, her presence warmer than the fire nearby. They will return with reinforcements, she said. Not scouts, not engineers, enforcers. Talon looked up at her, then back down to the blade. I figured. Doesn't leave bruises behind. They bring hammers. Vila knelt, her eyes scanning his face. "You've changed." He gave a dry chuckle. "I think I stopped changing the moment I saw you licking my cheek in front of an army." She smirked at that. "You resisted. You adapted. Now, you fight." Talon sobered. "I didn't expect to care about this place, or about you. But I do." Vila's tail curled slightly. "The bond deepens with truth." Ari appeared then, her fur soaked, armor darkened by water and time. "We have found something," she said. "Southridge, old buried tech. Not ours, not Arcos." That got Talon's attention. "Show me." They trekked for an hour through slick roots and steep slopes. At the base of the southern ridge was a collapsed ruin, half swallowed by the jungle. Roots had grown over the structure, but angular lines peeked through the moss. Metal, not stone. Alien but familiar. It hummed faintly beneath the surface. Talon knelt and placed his palm against the wall. "It's shielding something." Ari handed him a shard of metal. "Same as the ruins near the crash. But this goes deeper." Vila stepped forward. "The old ones say the gods fell here, bleeding light. Their bones sleep in the earth." Talon swallowed. "This isn't myth. It's a vault." "What kind of vault?" Vila asked. "The kind Arcos would kill to open." They stared at the dark metal for a long moment. Rain tapped over it like fingers playing. Out a countdown. "We can't let them near it," Talon said. "If they breach it, they'll strip this entire jungle to the bone." Vila nodded. "Then we bury it again." "No," he replied. "We use it." Ari arched a brow. "Use it?" Talon stepped back, already scanning the terrain. "It's power. It's history. It's leverage. If we make them think it's destroyed or cursed, they'll hesitate. Arcos doesn't chase ghosts. They chase profit." Vila touched the side of the vault with reverence. "You think like them." "No," he said. "I think like you." Talon worked through the night with a group of Vila's most skilled crafters and scouts. Together they stripped vines, carved channels through the soft earth, and planted small charges. Repurposed mineral nodes from the southern cliffs, unstable and reactive under heat. The plan was dangerous. Sloppy timing meant death. But if it worked, the vault would appear to collapse, burying its secrets under tons of jungle stone. Vila never left his side. She didn't speak much, only assisted, securing cords, nodding, vines, hauling moss-covered boulders like they weighed nothing. The moonlight caught on the curves of her fur, and even as she worked, her eyes never wandered far from his. "You're too quiet," Talon said, glancing over as he fixed the pulse igniter to one of the columns. Vila wiped sweat from her brow. I'm thinking about." She hesitated, then said, "About whether the stars sent you or if we summoned you ourselves." Talon tightened the last strap, his fingers pausing. "I don't know if I believe in fate." "Neither did I," she admitted, "until you bled for me." They finished the setup by dawn. The charges were primed. The fake damage was placed. Cracks scribed into the vault's outer shell. Tech debris scattered like failed excavation. All that remained was to draw the enemy. "Until we let them find it," Talon said. "Make it look like it fought back." Vila tilted her head. "You want to bait them?" "Exactly," he replied. "Arcos doesn't give up easy, but they fear bad PR. We leak a recording, accidental footage, their scouts stumbling on forbidden tech, getting scared, retreating. No treasure, no story." Ari chuckled darkly. "Clever. Deception is its own kind. Of war." That evening, Talon and Vila returned to the village. The fires were low, the drums quiet. Warriors stood in silent vigil around the central flame. Something was building in the air. Expectation, dread, or maybe both. Vila led him to her private shelter, nestled high in the cliffs carved into the living trunk of an ancient tree. Soft moss lined the entrance. Luminous vines glowed gently along the walls. It smelled of wildflowers and smoke. Inside, she knelt beside a water basin and dipped her hands, washing away the last traces of ash and sweat. Then she turned to him. "Talon," she said quietly, "what happens when your people come back for you?" He stared at her for a long time. "They won't find who they lost. That man died in the jungle." She stepped closer, water glistening on her arms. "And what stands in his place?" He reached up and touched her cheek. "Something that belongs here." Vila leaned into his touch, her voice a whisper. "Then stay." He didn't answer with words. He kissed her slowly, deeply, like he had nowhere else to be and no time left to waste. Her tail curled around his waist, and for the first time since falling from the sky, Talon didn't feel like a trespasser. He felt home. They awoke to thunder that wasn't natural, not from clouds or storm, but from engines. Talon sat upright beneath the soft moss of Vila's shelter, heart racing, the last warmth of their night still clinging to him. Vila was already moving, slipping on her,